everybody. I'm gonna review a topic that I know I've talked about before, but it's probably been the better part of 2 years. And that is the 3 stages of a narcissistic threat. Okay, there's 3 distinct stages as far as I can tell. And they are: stage 1, they come and they ask you either to do something or they ask you for something, but it generally starts as a request. Okay, because remember, narcissists keep people around who serve a particular use and a particular function. And so usually they come to you asking for something. That's what their supply is. That's what they want from you. That's what they need from you. Because they often have deficits in their own lives and they fancy themselves to be delegators. And so it usually starts as a request. Step 2, you say no, then they usually shut down. You can see it, they clamp down they clamp down a visceral response usually. Like, hey, can you blah blah blah, and you're like, no, I really can't. Oh. You know, and then they bite their lip, or they look down, or there's usually some sort of uncomfortable body language cue where you can tell that they're chewing on some feelings, right? So they'll come back later, and this is the phase 2 part. When they come back and ask a second time, that is phase 2, right? They come back and they ask a second time. And if you're dealing with a narcissistic female, you can recognize certain red flags, like they're using the Mickey Mouse voice, or they start flirting. Okay, 9 times out of 10, when a girl just randomly starts flirting with you, there's been like no process leading up to it, just like flip the switch, bam, she's sexual. It may be legit, but ask yourselves a question. When a narcissistic female suddenly approaches you and presents as sexual, she might either want sex or she might want something from you. Okay? And you have to differentiate between the two. You know, it's unpopular advice, but remember, if you're dealing with a narcissistic female, the rules are different, okay? If she just approaches you for sex and you turn her down, that can make things worse. If she approaches you and you do have sex with her and then she asks and you turn her down, that's gonna make things worse. So it's a trap to begin with. And understand something. If she's wanting you to do something that you really don't want to do, or if you know that she's manipulating you, there's very, very little opportunity for you to gracefully escape from that. The best way that I have found is there just has to be something else going on, right? So the moment she approaches you, be like, babe, not now, I can't. I need to focus on this, okay? We'll do this later, right? So it has to be stopped before it ever starts, right? Otherwise, you're gonna open the door for it. So keep that in mind. Now, phase 3 is the actual overt threat. So if they've come back the second time and asked and you still tell them no, then they're going to start reaching back to that stack of ammo that they've been stacking against you from the beginning. I have a video called Stacking Ammo, and that's this. Narcissists usually never come into the company of a new person until they already have some kind of leverage. And you can hear it. One of the red flags is when somebody says, yeah, you know, whenever we first met, we didn't really get along, but, you know, once we got to know each other, blah, blah, blah. Or they'll say something like, you know, yeah, you know, we didn't get along, but, you know, or they did something, you know, they were a real dick to me and I shouldn't have been their friend, but, you know, I was, right? they present themselves as they present it in that way, but really what it is it's a new person with leverage that I can bring into my life now, right? So it's kind of a cue that the spider's caught another fly. And so with the threats, there's several kinds of threats, and the ones to worry the most about are the subtle, quiet ones. So it's very much like poker. You know, when you're playing poker, and we'll say you're playing Texas Hold'em, we'll give a specific variant of poker. If you're playing Texas Hold'em and you get dealt pocket rockets, a pair of aces, you don't go around saying, oh, hey, I've got aces, right? When you have the winning hand, you don't want to tip other players off that you've got the winning hand, right? And if you're bluffing, you also don't want to tip players off, right? But if you know a little bit about poker and you know about poker tells, you know that there's a difference between bluffing, where they're being unnaturally quiet and very timid, like you could sneeze and blow them away from the table. And then somebody's got a good hand where they're quiet, but they're confident, right? So they're not talking, but their mannerisms betray their confidence. So you have to really sort of differentiate and figure out what kind of threat it is you're facing. If they do actually hold, as the poker term is, they have the nuts, right? So you got to figure out whether or not they have the nuts. Generally, the louder they are, the weaker their position, because they're compensating for the weakness, right? So the more aggressive they are, the more obstinate and bigger pain in the ass they are, that's because they have very weak leverage, and they're having to expend extra energy to increase the threat level. And so it's mostly just noise, usually, right? So let me review all 3 of these again. Stage 1, they come and they ask for something, and you say no. Stage 2, they reapproach, and they're usually much nicer. Girls get flirty. I'm not quite sure what the male profile is. Maybe they're also flirty, or they come and they start loving on you and they say, remember when? I think that's usually an in for men. They will get you reminiscing on a pleasant memory about, like, when y'all first met. You remember the first time I laid eyes on you? I do. That kind of stuff. They butter you up, right? And then the ask comes, right? And then step 3 is when they pull out the stops and they make the threats, right? So, what do you do once they're threatening you? Okay, and we've established that there's several kinds of threats. Depending on the type of threat determines what you ought to do. In 90+% of the cases, you should just ignore the threat and don't feed it. Okay, remain neutral. Like, okay, do what you got to do, I guess. I like to use phrases like, you need to do what you feel is best. If that's what you feel is best, you should do it. Because most of the time, at that point, a threat is a very clear and obvious malicious action, right? And so that creates a contradiction in their head. And one of the reasons why it's so effective is because narcissists love to either be the victim or to be superior and to be a good person, right? And to look good. And it short circuits their brain when you say something like, if that's what you feel is best, then you need to do what you feel is best, right? That creates a contradiction in their head that they are highly, highly conscious of. Because it's hard to look like a good person when you're doing something harmful intentionally, right? Right? So, and they can't be the victim either, because they would then be the aggressor. So they don't have a play that works for them. And so that's one reason why it works so well to just say, look, do what you feel is best. I can't help you. I can't help you, but best of luck to you. I hope you figure it out. But there's really nothing I can do or say to help you with that. There's not. If there was, I would, but there isn't, so I won't. So you got to handle it kind of like that. The other thing is, you just have to be okay with just let them be terrible, right? Because even in the worst case scenario, even if they do have the nuts, you have to compare the short-term and long-term consequence of giving in versus not giving in. Because usually, for them to actually follow through with a threat, requires additional work, effort, and energy on their part. And that's kind of repulsive to somebody who's narcissistic. They got to do all the work themselves. It's not like people are doing it for them, right? They tend to fancy themselves. They like other people to, lavish them with their niceties and praise because they're such a valuable, good person, right? So it requires additional work for them to do it, and they may not actually want to do it. And if they do, then you have to be a upright walking vertebrate, we'll say, and take the blows as they come, toughen up, and show that you can withstand them at their worst, because that will pay dividends in the long run, where you show, okay, I can handle you at your worst, and it doesn't really faze me. So do your worst, I can take it. And what that does is that cheapens their threats. So now they know that they can't really hurt you. They can't threaten you with that kind of stuff anymore. Plus, and I think I've alluded to this before, they stack ammo. So if they never get to use that ammo, it stays on the stack. So the stack never shrinks. Let them shrink their stack of ammo. That's the other thing that they are very, very conscious of. They start pulling ammo off the stack. Once they use that ammo, they can't get it back. They can't unshoot it. And so for that reason, sometimes you'll see them, they'll make that threat, but then they'll just quietly put it back on the stack, and they'll make up some kind of bullshit excuse like, well, no, I'm not going to do that because that would make me, I'm not that kind of person, blah, 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 right? So they'll usually back down from it. So, again, and then you should always use your own brain for this kind of stuff, right? I mean, the advice I give is general advice that works at least 80 to 90% of the time, but it's still up to you as an adult to use your adult brain and to make sure that you're not making a decision that's not in your best interest by doing these things, right? So don't ruin your life and be like, well, the guy on the internet told me, right? Because it's just irresponsible. But for the most part, I think these are concepts that are anecdotally true. I think it probably rings true with a lot of people watching this. So yeah, they're gonna ask, then they come back and re-ask much more nicely or sexually, and then they come back swinging a hammer. Okay? And again, in the long run, and from my experience, it's always best to show that them at their worst can't hurt you. And it will hurt. I mean, some of the stuff might hurt, but you have to show that you can withstand it and that you're willing to go there. And it seems like a lot of work. And because in their mind, from their perspective, it's easier to replace you than to constantly try and beat you into submission, right? It's physically, mentally, and emotionally easier for them to just replace you. And that's what you want. That's how you have to get rid of a narcissist. You can't get rid of them. You can only give them to somebody else. They're like a gypsy curse, right? That's something I say fairly often on this channel, and I probably don't say it enough. You can't get rid of them. You can only give them to somebody else. And so the way you do that is you get yourself discarded. And it may hurt, but that's what you want. You want to get your ass kicked to the curb and, be all dramatic about it. No, that curb hurt my butt. right? And then as soon as they slam the door behind you, then you hop up and you go run your ass to freedom and to some good people. You'd be surprised at just how many good people there are in the world. And I'll leave you with this. If you're here on this channel, it's because you made the mistake of making a bad person your world. But in the world, there are many, many good people, okay? So there's a lot of good people in the world. You made the mistake of making your world one bad person. That's okay, we make mistakes. But don't waste your time with that person. Get out there and find a good person for you. I can promise you they're well within arm's reach. They're all over the place. All you have to do is just talk to people. If they talk to you back, this is what I tell people. Talk to somebody. If they talk back with you and carry on a conversation, they like you. And that's all you need to know. Because when people don't like someone, they don't talk. We don't talk to people we don't like. We avoid the people we don't like. So if they're not avoiding you and looking for an exit, they like you. So just relax. You know all you need to know. Find you a good person. And once you have a good person, don't make the mistake of making one person your world. Okay? You make one person part of your world. But when you make your world one person, that puts an unfair amount of responsibility on them, and you should never do that. You should have your world first and invite people into it. And that's how you get rid of toxic people and keep them out. You build your world first. So, I'm out of time. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, or share, and I'll see y'all on the next video.